I'm sorry, because of certain meddling issues, it's already delayed 15 minutes. And thanks for Aspire, invited me to talk to you all about writing culture. See what I do. See here we have a shutdown. So I have limited power in my system. What I will do, I will close the video. I think let me talk to you through audio only. This video will take more power from my system. Then I may end up with shortage of power before I complete this. So I'll close the video. Okay, so now about writing culture. So this kind of topics, yes, we are making it as a meeting to discuss with younger anthropologists to know what is culture writing. And this is the topic given to me to share some of my thinking, some of my ideas, what I know about it to the group. Audible? Audible? Yes. Okay, so writing culture, if I say, I think in the mid-80s, all of you are anthropologists, right? All of you have background, yes. Okay, in mid-80s, there was a book published called Writing Culture, which really was very critical about the established, conventional, traditional way of writing about a particular cultural group in the name of, or using the term concept, ethnography. So it really started questioning some of the established way of conducting fieldwork. Then, of course, subsequently to organize your data analysis and finalizing as a report to portray that particular culture, a group. So I will come to that point again at the end. But before to that, you all must have read about what we mean by ethnography. See, writing culture is always still in anthropology is writing ethnography. So some of the major points, maybe some of the points you may be aware of it, nothing wrong to recollect some of the ideas, or sometimes you want to really, when you listen again about the same topic or same aspects of a particular topic, you may get a better understanding, or you may end up with questioning some of the ideas you have already got about that particular thing. So in that way, I hope some of the points which I discussed would help you to this group. As I said again, I will go back to this culture writing. So basically, as anthropologists, if you look at the history, it all started writing about the other culture, writing about when you visit the other culture. And it's a mystery when you go to other group, you hardly know anything about how they live. Finally, we call how they live is a lifestyle. And how they live, the lifestyle is, in anthropological context, we call it culture. Everybody use the word culture. In a common parlance, in the newspapers we read culture, in the television we heard the word culture, and people talk, even in day-to-day life. Are you a cultured person? So that is a different way of expressing the meaning to communicate to somebody else. But for us, it is a lifestyle. It's a way of life. So how you understand the way of life and how to make through an approach, standardized approach, to really present a case in a very objective way to make people know about how that particular group really functions, works, behaves. So that is what we call through a proper methodology, scientific methodology, you end up with developing or portraying a particular group which is objective and which is something anybody can accept it. Oh, that is how the work group, that is how the group functions, behaves. So how to ensure that? That is a major point. Whatever you have written is really objective, and of course that is like a culture which is a group which has been portrayed in a very objective way and without any bias of the researcher who has done the research, who prepared the ethnography. So how to do that? This is where, of course, in anthropology you have standard cultural categories. Otherwise we call it institutions, social institutions, family, marriage, political organization, division of labor, then rituals, etc., etc. But when you capture the information, how best you can say it, this particular information? If you collect, you all know in anthropology, we go to the field work. If there are 100 families, you can't really talk to the 100 members of the 100 families. You pick up people to talk to them. And you say that is a data which could be used to write about the behavior of that particular group. Maybe you will pick up key informants. You list key informants, collect data. Maybe you could still do cross-checking. When you talk one person, what he says, when you talk to the next person, whether he's saying the same thing or whether it is some difference when you go to the third person. So this kind of cross-checking still you could do in the field. But finally, you need to substantiate whether you have really captured the pattern. That is more important. This is where the whole problem of generalization can be resolved, or many cases in ethnography, people keep criticizing. You just visit, talk to a few people, and the issue of representation, I will come to that point. Then you're writing it as a culture of that particular group. How you really ensure that? This is where I'm telling it should end up to really defining the pattern within that group, behavioral pattern. Whether it is marriage, we all know by definition what is it. But how they behave within that social institution or cultural institution, what is the common pattern which is there within that group, is the crux of the issues. This is where anthropologists are specialists to really capture that pattern. If you capture that, then definitely that could be a good ethnography. Second one is, I also like to insist the perspectives, the participants' perspective, the community's perspectives, whether your data could really reflect the perspective of the entire group. These are some of the things you really need to ensure, whether the ethnography you're writing really captures the pattern and perspectives. And of course, we do it really going to the actual setting. This is what we say. We do field work. We are not collecting through posting questionnaires. We are not going to the archives, picking up information, or going to the library, collecting information and use it as a data. But our methodology insists that you should go to the actual setting in the sense where people live, and see and observe and talk to them. And in a marginal way, this participant observation, you all know, in a marginal way, you also interact, participate. So all these things helps you a kind of multiple methods would ensure to really you yourself can cross-check and you change the context. You meet different people so that the validation process is happening constantly, consistently. So we go to the settings, actual settings. So ethnography is generated, ethnography is done. Being there, this is what Clifford said. Clifford Kidd, one of the very well-known anthropologists in the late 70s and 80s. He is the one who really started the whole concept of writing culture. So he says being there is more important. So the other point is about how to make it holistic. Culture is not, and E.B. Tyler, the earliest one who talks about the way of life, who defines, even till date, his definition stands. And everybody is using his definition. So he talks about it's a complex whole. So everything is interconnected. So economic system could influence the ritual system, life cycle ceremonies. Of course, marriage and family are very closely integrated. Your political system also could influence your sustainability of marriage, or as a group, to work as a group. So, or to conduct certain rituals, etc., everything. So these are all things you are very much familiar with. But so the point is, no, you need to look at it in a very holistic manner. Okay, so if you look at the history, it's all say something like, even in Indian context, it is always, there is a lot of history, discussion and literature available about this maritime trade. So East and West, we had relationship with Mediterranean, Rome up to then West Asia, West Asian countries, and East, of course, from the entire Coromandel coast from 2nd century BC onwards. Continuous trade, etc. So people who visit, they started recording things. So then during this Europeans movement, colonial period from maybe 12th, 13th and 16th century onwards in a very intensive way, you could see a recording of information about a particular culture, a group, the visitor, so travel log, etc., based on individual's interest. Then it comes while actually colonial rulers, when they are ruling the country, they have problem to understand. Again, as I said, everyone, for anybody, if you go to another culture, it's a mystery. And you don't know why they wear the dress in such a way, why they have that kind of food practices, what they eat, how they really come together as a married couple, etc., etc. It's always difficult to make out. Now, of course, you have some literature, already published literature, so you can have you can gain, or you can make yourself to some extent familiar about this particular group you can go. But during that time, it's very difficult. So colonialists used missionaries, and of course they also brought anthropologists to study people in the colonies, to know about them, to have a control over them, to rule over finally. So these are all pre-ethnographic writings, which of course helped us to really know how the whole writing practices started. Then of course colonial period, then late 19th century and all, the whole discipline started emerging. Even anthropology emerged through this kind of historical attempts. So when anthropology emerged, of course, you all know how American anthropology, then anthropologists from Europe, all these big names, Malinowski's visit to South Pacific, Margaret Mead's visit to South Pacific, Evans Pritchard to Africa, Levi-Strauss to Amazon area, like South America, etc., etc. So then you can see classical ethnographic studies started coming. Evans Pritchard, newer is still. Similarly, Mead's, Ruth Benedict's study about these Pueblo Indians. So it started coming up. Then, of course, the tradition continued, methodology got refined. This whole approach is called a realistic writing, a realistic ethnography. This is where now, after 50s, 60s, 70s, in 70s, late 70s, people started questioning some of the methods. And the way, not only methods, the role as an anthropologist. You go to the field and of course, you finally give an output as an ethnography. So one major issue they raised is, this is where they all, now critical anthropology, from realistic anthropology, then it moved towards critical anthropology. Critical anthropology, I just touch a few points. I don't want to really go very detailed into it. I don't think that is required for the kind of objective you have for this particular session meeting or this particular workshop Aspire is conducting. So that is more of research, that is more of what we can say debate. And it really talks about the whole process and outputs of writing culture. So some of the points which are very essential, it is important also for you to understand when you say you are going to write a small ethnographic note. So how? From realistic anthropology, how certain, or realistic, the way of developing realistic ethnography, how certain questions raised very critically to some of them accepted it, but still it is a debatable area, but it is worth. Anybody who writes ethnography, it is worth to consider that. The first point is about, they call it positionality and reflexivity. See how, as a researcher, how you behave in the field. So otherwise, you have this researcher role and you are going to do research. So the other category is called researched. The moment you think in that way, researcher researched, then you are there to study them. How you get the role? Because you have knowledge. That knowledge provides you some power. So that power really matters. So you assume power. You think you are knowledgeable. Then you act in the field. In the sense, you talk to people, you generate data, etc., etc. But always, this element of like you taking a dominant position and ending up with as an expert writing something is it acceptable? That is the question they keep writing. This is where they ask about. This is where they criticize about, or they say, they use the word reflexivity. Reflexivity is like based on my position, my understanding, my knowledge, how I really act in the field. So how to correct it? That is a question left to the ethnographers. How to really address that problem? One is, of course, in other option given is make it more participatory, so that you treat the other group as your equal. You don't stand over them. And also keep questioning yourself. It's called self-critical analysis. Am I doing right? Constantly. Am I doing right? So that kind of constant questioning should be there within one side. A kind of monologue one should keep on involving. So that would help us to resolve to some extent. The second one is about the whole issue of representation. Whatever this is where the objectivity and representation. You claim that you are out of all this bias and other things, and you generate data, you arrive at a conclusion. Whether this conclusion is really a representative idea for the entire culture. This is where again they started questioning about how much your research could reflect the reality. If you say it's a portrait, how much the portrait is close to the reality? Definitely 100% reflecting the reality is. Theoretically, maybe you can say, practically nowhere it is possible. So how much you can go close to the reality? How much the research really represents the reality which is existing over there? This is the second question they talk about it. So like in Tamil Nadu, there is an ethnography about Toda. Can we say, yes, this ethnography is 100% reflecting, or 90% reflecting, or 75% reflecting, close to the reality, or 50? If it is 50, it's a bad ethnography. So the whole issue is, if it is only 50%, then it's not a good research. So why it is? There could be reasons like all other factors we discussed now could not be very properly addressed, could not be very properly followed, adopted. Then the other one is, like, as I said, reflexivity is also related to engagement. How you engage yourself when you are in the field with the community members. This is where again, the whole issue of expert and subject. For you, they are subject to study. And I am an expert. I know what kind of questions I should ask. I know what kind of data I need to write an ethnography. So with this kind of mindset, if you go there, then they ask. It is not subject, or it is not expert subject or research, it should be more in terms of on-par relationship. This is what the basic issue of make it more inductive. We call it inductive, yes. Completely open mind. Go there. Listen them. Consider you also as one among them. And they are equal to you. Maybe you are because of your experience, have some better understanding, more information about certain things, but they may also have definitely more information better than you. In participative research, we put one chart where you have 4 blocks. The interaction should be first block. I know you know. No need to discuss about it. Second block, you know I don't know. This is where better you listen them more. Third is no, I know you don't know. This is like sharing your information. Fourth one is no, I don't know, you also don't know. This is where try to explore more, and this is for, of course, for intervention you can give your suggestions, recommendations, etc., etc. So it should be like that. The point here it is you accept, you know, they also know. They don't know, you also don't know. This is how the whole participatory ethnography needs to be built. These are all some of the points this critical ethnography group talks about it to really develop a good ethnography or participatory ethnography, where their claim is you can really go much more closer to the reality than taking a stand of expert, keeping away with certain framework, ending up developing a text and showing it as an ethnography and say these are the culture marks. Now, one more issue is the whole issue of ethics. Here it talks about, again, when you work with the community, when you develop an ethnography, what will be the one, of course, you get a product. Fine, the community should cooperate with you to really generate knowledge for the entire human race. In that way, we anthropologists convince ourselves. We are going them, of course, we are studying them, of course, it is for the sake of anthropological knowledge, and we understand how people live, how culture works, dynamics, etc., etc. So it is like in a universal context, generating knowledge. Like any other science, of course, we are talking to people, meeting people, but that's fine. Are you sure it is not going to create any negative impact over them? This is where one should be very careful about when we talk about the ethics point of view. Second one is, of course, there could be benefits. If there are something because of your research the community could get, you ensure that further steps can be taken, or you can really suggest this is how it could really work. There are cases how an ethnography can help for the local community to get certain benefits, to retain their titles, retain their knowledge, get some economic benefits, not hijacked or taken away by some external group, etc., etc. So ethnography is not only taking care of the negative impact the community could face because of it, but also ethnography can also lead facilitate a positive result, benefits for the community. Second, as an ethnographer, how close we can go. Sometimes if you are very close, these are all some of the things practically you all know when you go to the field. If you become more emotional, of course, your scientific temper will get reduced. And of course, whatever you write as an ethnographer, whether it is university supported or government supported or any other donor supported, it should be open and transparent. And the last one is, as I said already, the representation, whether you should. Otherwise, if it is not accurate, if it is not fair, if it really demands further and further research and you say, no, this is how it should be, then you are really doing a injustice, not only to the community, but also to the scientific community. So these are some of the points I thought I should share with you. Then about writing, it's again a systematic way of one should do it. This is something related with individual's skill and how to develop the skill and how to really practice the skill you have developed. See, like in general, when you try to do anything, it should start with something like pre-writing. Even for this 45 minutes talk, I just jotted down some notes. Similarly, as I said, we are not living in an ancient world where when sailors reach the other coast, they are perplexed, they are completely lost, they don't know what is happening. Only they could see human beings, but how human beings behave, no. That era has gone. Now about the two in the globalized world now. This globalized world, as I don't know, anyway, this is not a topic to discuss here, but because of this globalization, initially there's a global village. It was in 70s and 80s. Now it is really a global village. Global village is connecting each and everyone and all the time. So yes, advantages. And of course the disadvantage even now, why we are all experience this kind of serial lockdowns, mainly because of this globalization. Pandemics also become globalized. So this globalization helps you to really get exposed to many things. So if you want to know about your group, study a group, definitely you could able to get something out of it. To get yourself initial familiarity, yes, this pre-writing is the step. When you write, try to do this ethnography. It is always from ethical point of view, and also as a researcher, there are certain things you are supposed to do. You should get the consent. In India, we don't really follow many of the things. And I work for an organization, and of course, they are very strict about this getting consent letter. And some of the pictures I sent 2 months back, they wanted to not even publish it in the website, but they wanted to present to the board. They want to use it in the slides. For that, they